Welcome to Elizabeth Plants. I'm Elizabeth, and today let's talk about self-watering. So if you guys watched my last repotting and Q&A video, I got a lot of questions about self-watering and self-watering with LECA if you watched my LECA video. So today I thought I would just sit down and talk to you guys about self-watering pots. First, I want to start by showing you three types that I've got here that I'm going to be talking about, and then we'll talk a little bit about how to pick one out for yourself. Anything I talk about will be linked in the description below, though none of these brands are sponsoring this video. So first, let's talk about one that I have not tried yet. So this is less of a review and more of just like an option that's out there. This one in particular is really cheap and comes in like multiples. So this is a cheap option if you're looking for something small. But essentially what a self-watering pot is it waters itself to an extent. There's always a little bit of you watering because you're not hooking it up to an irrigation system or your plumbing, not in these cases anyways. So this pot in particular has the, like, we'll call them reservoirs, the part that you put the plant in, and then it comes with a string. So this self-watering pot works different than the ones I'm going to show you next, in that, if you can see in there, there we go, block it. You can see there's the little aeration holes, and then there's this bigger hole. That's something you're not going to see in the other ones because this string goes through it. So it goes through the bottom, the water goes in here, and then kind of the purpose is to put this up into the soil. I have not, like I said, tried this. I'm not sure if it would be better to have the string go all the way to the top of the soil or not. When I put plants in these to test them, I will probably put them 1/2 to 3/4 the way up the soil. And then if I need to, I can always tug it down out the bottom to lower it. But the idea, the concept behind this, and I believe this is a cotton string, and the type of string is important if you wanted to recreate this on your own, which you could. It's to wick up the water into the soil so that the roots can then drink. And so that's this one. Again, this is not one that I have tested yet, but it is an option out there, and then you just can refill the basin right here. Next, I want to talk about my least favorite type, a type that I do not recommend. And this pot is dirty because it is a used pot, so you'll have to kind of forgive me there. This is an option, but it is one that I do not recommend. When you are picking out a self-watering pot, I do not recommend something like this. So what I mean is I do not recommend something where, unlike this one, you cannot pull out this part without uprooting the plant, essentially. And I mentioned this in my LECA video because I used this for my LECA plant. Soil is super impossible with this kind of pot. If your reader's not reading correctly, if it gets dislodged, if you overwater it on accident for whatever reason, you're basically screwed and you're set in it. With LECA, it's a little bit easier because LECA is easier to put in and out than soil is. So for soil plants, I do not recommend one where you cannot actually access the water basin separate from the part that the plant is in. But how this one works, so let's pretend we're going to use them for LECA and not soil, is the water goes below this black part, the black part sits in it, and the roots soak up the water. As you can see, these little like cone bits go down into the water, and I would recommend, if you were to want really badly to put soil in here, do a layer of LECA too to help wick up the water without soaking the soil. But if you're just using LECA, then you will fill the water past this basin and have maybe like 1 inch of LECA no roots, and then put the plant on top. And you want the water to be about that 2-inch spot, 1 inch below, and then the inch without roots but is LECA. And then once you've got this all set up, you will fill the base the water basin with water, and this little, let's see if I can just fake it for you. This little floater will rise up in this measuring thing and let you know when it is full. So something that I've noted about this specific one, and I will link it below if you want to use it for LECA, but with this specific one, and definitely test whatever one you get, my finger is approximately 2 inches up into an inch and a half into the tube, and the level is all the way at max. Well, about an inch and a half to the tube is up to here. So what that means is that if your little red thing is up at the top line, the max line, and you're using soil, but don't have anything separating the soil from the water down below, your water is about up to here, and your soil is probably soaked. You risk rot. So definitely test where the top of the black piece, the separator piece, whatever you want to call it, actually sits for the fill line. Because for this one specifically, it's about halfway between the first line and the second line. And if you go a little any higher, then it is too much. And that also does make a difference when you make a mess. See, I have this, and if we were to put it on a flat surface, it's not down all the way. So be sure that you have it down all the way when you go to do that measurement, because if you don't, you'll be incorrect. So stick it in your pot, make sure it's down as far as possible, and then do your testing to just make sure you're not overwatering your plants. So now that we've got those two out of the way, I want to show you my absolute favorite type, and I actually really love this specific pot, especially for the price point. Pots can be so expensive. This is a decent size. You're gonna have to spend a little bit more if you want bigger. This pot is the one that you saw me use in the Q&A. So it is just like the first one minus the wick, and just like the second one, except you can take this part out. So it's a nice combo. You've got the water basin, which is just my aesthetic perfectly, but they do come in other colors, I believe. And then you've got this part, which is where you put the plant, and there is all of these little bits down there, which hopefully you can see, including the cones. It's also got a center one that just sits right in there. And then just like the one we looked at previously, it comes with the measuring thing. It doesn't come put together, so I want to show you how is best to put it together. Some of them, this one specifically, you can just drop through once it's put together. Some of them you actually have to put this bottom down here and then put this top up here, otherwise it won't fit. So just keep that in mind when you're putting it together. It's not the end of the world. I made the mistake the first time and it was moments to fix it. But you want to put it together properly. You want to make sure it's nice and snug, otherwise the water level reading will be incorrect. Then you just plop it in there. I still do, I recommend smaller LECA. I don't have smaller LECA and it still works, but smaller LECA is just nicer. But you put maybe a half inch of LECA in here. It'll fill the cones. So if you have a stake that you want to stick in a cone, for example, put that in before you put the layer of LECA in. But you throw a little small layer of LECA in there to just keep a barrier between the water and the soil so that you're not soaking the soil unnecessarily. And then put your plant in, and voila. You will want to be sure that it's in there to the bottom. And then I'll just pull it out to show you, when the floater hits water, it floats. So when the water is filled, it'll go up to, and I think you can see that max line, and then it'll go down, letting you know you need to water again. And I do find that this one is pretty accurate. So like the max is going to actually be up to here-ish. So this specific pot, linked down below, is my favorite for all of those reasons. I highly recommend it if you are looking to self-water your plants. So the next question you might have then is, how do I know if I need to use self-watering or want to use self-watering? And my answer to that for you is another question. Do you water more than you have time for? And keep in mind this, you also don't want your plants to need that water because the pot's too small. But assuming everything else is going well for your plant, can you just not keep up with the watering? Number one. And then number two, what are your plant's watering needs? So that's my answer. So I'm going to give you an example. Alocasia, for example, require a little bit more water than, say, my syngoniums do. For that reason, I'm more likely to put an alocasia in self-watering because it needs water more than my syngoniums. I cannot keep up with my watering if I do not have assistance with some of my plants. So for that reason, I would put maybe an alocasia or a fast-growing philodendron or monstera or something into self-watering. What I do not recommend is you putting dry-tolerant plants in self-watering. So for example, a cacti or a succulent or anything like that, I do not recommend that you do that because they don't need watering that often. If you can't get to them in time, they will likely be okay. Whereas in like an alocasia or a plant that's very thirsty all the time needs water more frequently than you can give them sometimes. So that is the case in which I would use self-watering. It is also entirely preference. If you do not like putting watering in the hands of an item or a self-watering system, don't use it. There's no reason why you would have to use it. Self-watering is very nice in the case of leca because you've got an indicator for where the water is. However, some people would prefer putting the leca in like an orchid pot and then in a bowl. Or something like that because it's clear and you can see through. These specifically, and I don't think I've come across any, they probably exist, but these ones specifically are not clear, so I can't see the root system through these pots. And that goes for all three of them. I can't see the root system, so if you want to be able to see the root system, maybe this isn't perfect for you. You can go with something like an orchid pot in a bowl in the case of leca, or just an orchid pot in soil in the case of soil. So that is kind of my little spiel on self-watering. I have really been gravitating towards self-watering for a lot of my plants, and I have honestly had to learn the hard way that this is a no-go pot. I wasted a ton of money on these pots. So far they're working for leca. Fingers crossed that they continue to work for leca because that's their only purpose for me. With all that said, I wanted to share my learned knowledge with you. If you want me to review a specific self-watering pot, let me know in the comments down below. I'd be happy to review more types of pots, more self-watering pots, and the like. So just let me know in the comments down below. If you use self-watering and you love it and you want to share some of your favorite self-watering tips down below, absolutely put those in the comments. Subscribe if you want to see more planty content like this video. It lets me know that this is the type of stuff you want to see. Ring the bell if you want to be notified when I go live. YouTube's notification system doesn't always work, so that just would allow you to not miss my videos. See you next time.